Okay. Well, I can put the slides up. Let me do that. Bear with me. Can you make me a co-host, Melanie? Thanks. Okay. Everybody can see the slides? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so hey, we're part of C3EN, Chicago Chronic Condition Equity Network, the NIMHD funded Disparity Center. I think there are 11 of centers across the country, and they were established with the idea that they want to help support the growth of networks of health disparities researchers in each of the different regions. And so our region covers what might be considered the greater Chicago area. So that's like, southern Wisconsin, parts of Indiana, the Chicago and the suburbs. So I'm Brad Applehans. I'm at Rush University. I'm one of the Investigator Development Corps co-directors, and the Investigator Development Corps is the one that sort of manages the pilot award program. So I'll let Dr. Baig and Melanie introduce themselves too.
Great, thanks, Brad. I am the co-director with Brad. I'm at the University of Chicago. I'm a general internist, primary care doctor, and health services researcher, and excited to talk to everyone today.
Hi, I'm Melanie Nordstrom. I'm the program manager, and I actually work at University of Chicago, but I'm taking a meeting at Rush today, so I feel like a liar. Yeah, if everyone could please send me in the chat your name and contact information so that I know who attended this meeting. Thanks.
Okay. And we have some other members of the Investigator Development Corps as well. We have three, there's Melanie. We have two statisticians that provide support to the pilot awardees as well, and they're involved in the center too. The purpose of the whole, as I mentioned, the purpose of the pilot award program is to help provide early stage investigators with some funding, as well as a bunch of methodological support so that they can have the pilot data they need to build an NIH funded health disparities research program. And so in addition to the money, which we'll get into that in a minute, we do have a whole variety of content experts that awardees have access to both during their project and then after their project as they're writing new grants. And being part of the network means that you have access to the research infrastructure, both at University of Chicago and Rush. And so it's kind of exciting to see that all of the prior cycles of awardees are now part of our little group, and we're growing every year. So you may not be surprised to hear the pilot grant should focus on addressing disparities. Should focus on disparities in multiple chronic diseases. There's this focus on comorbid chronic conditions. And so ideally that would be something like, diabetes and heart disease, or maybe depression and arthritis, or some kind of a combination. We are not intending to fund large projects by established investigators. It's not meant for bridge funding or to supplement ongoing studies. However, if a new investigator wants to do an ancillary study that sort of piggybacks on ongoing work, that would be fine, as long as the scientific aims are distinct. So we really do want the new investigators to kind of be building their own little program of research that can flourish into a larger program. So small projects consisting of formative or summative research activities, so maybe needs assessments or maybe debriefing sessions with community partners, that may actually be more appropriate for a different funding mechanism we have. We've been calling those the mini grants, and we have funding for $3,000. It's $3,000, or is it? Yeah, for those kinds of projects. So if that's you're considering something on that scope, look into that mechanism as opposed to the pilot award. Okay, so some of the priorities we're looking to fund are, as I mentioned, focusing on disparities in multiple chronic diseases. The center also has 3 R01 level projects. All of those focus on comorbid chronic conditions. And so we're looking to kind of see that in the pilot studies as well. We are very interested in intersectoral approaches to reducing disparities. So these are interventions that happen outside of the health sector, but then have downstream impacts on health. So this might be something to do with housing or educational pipelines or things like that. We are very interested in projects that have a bidirectional partnership with community organizations, community stakeholders. We have very strong partnerships and representation from community stakeholders within the center. And in fact, half of the people that review the applications are community stakeholders. So we don't require that every project necessarily be a community-based participatory research study, but we definitely prioritize those. Obviously, we want novel approaches and study designs. And there's examples of that here, but these are the kinds of things that really are going to represent the future of disparities research. So we like to see pilot studies that get started down that track. And of course, interested in supporting underrepresented minority researchers as well. Eligibility. So there are some interesting eligibility criteria here, and a lot of those stem from the requirements from NIH. So you do have to be affiliated with a Chicago academic institution or community organization. So this is part of building a kind of geographically defined network of disparities researchers. So you do have to be in the, we say Chicago, but Chicagoland area, the greater Chicago region. Postdocs, early career faculty are definitely eligible to apply. Students, pre-doctoral trainees, residents, not eligible to apply. And in addition to being based in Chicago as an investigator, the work has to take place in Chicago as well. Let's see. Applicants must be early stage disparities researchers, and there's a few ways that we've tried to define that. So one could be you just completed your training within the past 10 years. So you're just sort of a general early stage investigator. But it could also be the case that you're early career faculty who may be beyond 10 years, but you have not yet had substantial NIH funding in health disparities. So this could be kind of mid-level faculty who have not done a lot of disparities work, but want to transition into disparities. So they would be eligible for a pilot award as well. And we can only give you one research pilot grant total, but you can apply multiple times, and you can even submit multiple applications in the same cycle, as long as they're scientifically distinct. I won't go over this in detail. This is the components of the application. It follows more or less like an NIH R03 or R21 format. And there's more information on this in our RFA. More of that. I feel like every 6 months, NIH comes out with new requirements and new forms. So who knows if we're going to have to update these. Okay, we should definitely consider community engagement. So as I mentioned before, not every project does need to be community engaged. You can propose a project with no community involvement, but we do require that you describe the level of community engagement, think about it and describe it in a very thoughtful way, and argue for why the level of community engagement you've proposed is appropriate for this stage of the study. And so, for example, maybe you're doing a project that has some community relevance. At this point, there's some kind of consultation with the community, but there's not shared decision-making. And so you would want to argue for why that's appropriate. You might say things like, at this stage, we just need input, and we have plans to engage the community on a deeper level going forward once X, Y, and Z are known. We do have this really nifty, I don't know if it's an infographic or something that describes different levels of community engagement, and you can find this, I think there's a link to this in the RFA, and that might help you distill your thinking about what level of community engagement is appropriate and how you might describe it in the application. Okay, maybe we'll do a couple more and turn it over to Arshia. How's that? Okay. Yeah, and we can, on that same note, provide you with consultation. So certainly feel free to reach out to us. And in fact, as I mentioned, we do have quite a large network of community partners and stakeholders that we work with and interact with on a regular basis. They're part of the leadership team of the center. And so if you have an idea, but may need some help formulating a plan for community engagement or even identifying a community partner, definitely reach out to us because we might be able to match you up with somebody. That would be ideal. In fact, that's kind of something that we're hoping to do more of as a center. And just to go over the funds that are available. So these projects should probably be about 12 months. It's acceptable to propose 24 months if there's a compelling reason for that. The reason we don't like 24 months is that it's just adding extra time before this project, this pilot study, can then be leveraged into a, an NIH R01 level study. So we do want to kind of get new investigators rolling on their careers. So 12 months is the default. The budgets can be up to $50,000. And then in addition to that, if you have engagement by a community partner, there's an additional $10,000 that can be allocated to the community partner for their role on the project. We do cover indirect costs. Depending on what's in your budget, we may require some modifications. And then we do have a couple of limits. So $2,500 for conference travel, $2,500 for major equipment. And we do allow investigators to budget for up to 10% effort for the principal investigator. You can have other investigators on the project as well. You can have staff, research assistants, statisticians. There's no limit to putting personnel on your study, but for the PI, we wouldn't want to see like a large portion of the grant funds just going to supporting effort. So 10% is kind of our cap. And so I'll turn this over to Arshia here.
Great, thanks, Brad. So the great thing about this Investigator Development Corps is that we have the pilot grants program, but we also want to support our investigators after they get the grant. So some of that is through consultation. You saw that we have a couple of biostatisticians in our Corps. We have experts in informatics, implementation science, and intersectoral action for health. So if you need consultations in these areas, please let us know, and we will connect you to the faculty in the C3EN Center who can help with that. And then mentorships. So within the application, we do ask that you identify a mentor and have a mentoring plan. But maybe you need a methodological mentor or a content expert, or you want mentorship from a C3EN investigator. Please let us know. We're happy again to connect you to folks. We do have quarterly research progress meetings, which really is to bring together our investigators and our junior investigators and hopefully like form a cohort. And right now we're hearing about people's projects. It's like a format, like workshop really, for troubleshooting, giving us progress. And then we do ask that you submit a brief progress report to us, and those details would be provided if you receive a grant. And then in terms of the conditions of funding, so if you have human subjects in your research project, we do ask that you submit your IRB approval to us prior to the issuance of funds. And then we actually do need to review your data safety monitoring plan for all non-exempt human subject research. And then if you do have a clinical trial, you should register your study at clinicaltrials.gov, which is something that most folks are doing anyway. So good. I guess those are the main things, so this next deadline will be June 1st. So there's a couple months. And we do have the RFA listed here. It's on our website, and that's for both the mini grant and the larger grant. And just so you know, for the mini grants, actually, that is a rolling deadline, though they're issued July 1st every year. So if you're interested in that, there's no deadline for that. Was there anything else? Oh yeah, and then just a big thank you, and thank you to Melanie for organizing us and bringing the group together. And we really wanted to focus on any questions all of you have as well, so we can answer those if you have any questions. I think there's some questions in the chat as well. So
okay.
Great.
Yeah, let me see what's in the chat here. What about facilities? Can funding be used for office space? Generally those would probably come from indirects at a typical academic institution, but if you're in a community group, I don't see any reason you couldn't budget for rent or budget for facility fees. I think that's a totally fair thing to put in there.
Thank you, Brad.
Sure. Slides will be shared with attendees. Yes. I think that's all the questions in the chat. What other questions have we got?
There's another one here about from Monique about, can you hold this grant with the K-12 or K-08? I believe so. You know, our goal is to help junior investigators collect all the data they need and do the studies that they need to do to get that next R01 level grant. So I think that would be fine.
I agree. I think I'm not that familiar, but I do believe that you just can't have like an R01 or exceed a certain proportion of effort while you hold a KL2 or 08. So you may not, there may be a limit on how much of your own effort you can put on this pilot, but that's not clear to me. Are indirects at the full NIH level? Melanie, they are, correct?
Yeah, they're at your negotiated institutional rate, and then there's another rate for CBOs. If you don't have a negotiated rate, there's a standard rate, but I forget what that is off the top of my head.
And in terms of the application, it's 5 pages for the research plan, and then a page for aims, you know, so it's like a little bit shorter than R03 or an R21. Yeah, certainly feel free to distribute this announcement within your institutions. Another question in the chat, are the indirects included in the 50K budget or on top? That would be on top of the budget, right, Melanie? Yeah, 50K indirects. Okay, any other questions?
Oh, I can answer the question on cycles. So this is our 3rd cycle. We'll only have 5 cycles total. The next one will be probably the deadline will be sometime in December of this year, maybe early January, with the funding date starting the following July. And then, yeah. So then, you know, and then the 5th cycle will be on the same sort of calendar cycle. Yeah.
We have another one. Is it required to have 2 chronic conditions or just prioritized? Archia, what's your memory on that one? You know, I feel like we've debated it a little.
Yeah, we have. I think our priority is multiple chronic conditions, but I don't think it's a fixed requirement from what I remember. I mean, our whole center is focused on multi-morbid, comorbid conditions, and the R01 projects through the center are focused on multi-morbid conditions. But I think for the pilot grants program, yeah, there's many chronic conditions do have comorbidities. So if you can have that focus, that'd be great. But if you write a strong application, otherwise, I think that would be fine. And again, you know, we're happy to also meet with you as you're drafting your grants as well.
Another question. So not formative community engagement work, but would community educational programs be eligible clinical trial? Yeah, we will certainly fund a range of studies on disparities. They can be observational, they could be just data analysis projects, educational programs in the community, as long as they have a significant relevance to health disparities. I think it's fair game. And for those who are ready to sign off, feel free to email any questions that you may have to any of us, Archia, myself, Melanie. Not adult medicine only. There's another question. Is it adult medicine only? No, any topic is fair game in terms of different populations.
Without undermining the RFA, Archia, Brad, chime in and let me know if this sounds accurate. If you have a question and a chronic disease and a strong community partnership, like those are scoring really well. I think there's an understanding amongst the people that are reviewing them that if you say something like PTSD, that everyone understands that there's a downflow of multiple chronic diseases that comes from that. And so, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, well, feel free to send questions. Good luck with your applications. I guess we're done, huh?
Thank you. We
Take
appreciate it.
care.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
A good weekend.